Oh, um, welcome everyone. January meeting of the Horkin Marsh Bird Club. Um, we're going to do just a little bit of club business to start out with, and then we will head into our speaker for this evening. We have a little bit of business to conduct. Um, we are going to have our upcoming Nest Box seminar, which is going to be March 1st, I believe. Um, so we're going to cover this. I don't know what's going on with my phone, but anyhow, that's what I wanted to call the meeting to order. Does anybody know what this is? Bald eagle. Great. Correct. Excellent. Wow. Um, so we're going to be covering eastern bluebirds, wood ducks, and this year we're going to do something with some habitat or what people can do to um, enhance their yard and for some native habitats and to bring in birds. So we are going to bring in a guest speaker, and it's going to be Danielle Bell, and she is the owner of a business that does ecological restorations in southern Wisconsin. Um, um, so she does charge a fee for that, and we were looking at having the bird club cover those costs. And she typically charges $200 for speaking events. Do we have any discussion on that? She will be covering um, what to plant, native shrubs, um, um, Danielle uses her experience in restoring native prairies, wetlands, and woodlands throughout southeast Wisconsin to inspire residential designs. Her passion is to restore sterile turf monocultures into a healthy, sustainable, diverse habitats that both people and wildlife can enjoy. So her title of her talk is going to be Providing for Our Feathered Friends. Do we have any discussion on um, being able to fund her? Brad? Okay, we have
I'll second it.
a nomination or a discussion and a motion and from Brad Webb and second from Suzanne to cover those costs for the Nest Box seminar coming up. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Um, the motion has passed. All right. Thank everybody for that. Um, Liz, do you have would you like to come up and we're going to have our annual candlelight coming up here this Saturday. If there's anyone still wants to volunteer, I am looking for a bird buddy to come out and help with them with our owl talks that we do. So if you want to come on out and blather on about owls
It have to be
endlessly.
the whole night if it's cold.
And you don't
do
have
it
to
in
do
shifts.
any of the talking. Trust me, Jeff will do all the talking. You just have to help with crowd control. And
You have nobody else. Sounds good. We'll get you some information then. So thank you. Appreciate that. So just want to give a couple updates on some of the programs coming up at the Education Center. Obviously, the candlelight's coming up on Saturday. Why there's a mess out in the lobby, so I apologize for that as we get prepped for it. We do have a cabin fever event coming up on February 8th. I think I mentioned at the last Bird Club meeting, we have 2 bus tours that will coming up in February. One is the Winter Birds bus tour, and then 2 weeks after that, that third Saturday in February, we will have our Eagle Adventure bus tour. Those are now open for registration on our Friends Group website, which is horkonmarsh.org. So you can register there, pay there, secure your slot. They're both over halfway full. So if it's something you're interested in, make sure you get on that sooner than later. Also, you should have got an email from Suze today if you want to share the good news but we've been working hard as a committee for the Bird Festival, and that registration, events, everything is now officially live. So we're giving you guys kind of the sneak peek and the heads up that it's all there so you can get there before the general public. We're going to release it probably tomorrow to the general public and just let everybody know that it is now open. So if you want to peruse that tonight and sometime throughout tomorrow, lots of bus tours, lots of guided hikes, something for everybody. So hopefully you get a chance to do that. And then the third Saturday in May is our wildflower sale. And that's why we're bringing Danielle on for our nest box seminar. She's going to highlight some of the plants that are great for birds, but are also available at our pre-order sale for our wildflower sale. So you will be able to kind of get an idea of which of those plants might be the best benefit for birds. And then you have the opportunity to pre-order those at a cheaper price for the sale to pick up in May. So just a little bit of a tie-in with our birds and our wildflower sale that we have coming up, again, that third Saturday in May. And all of that can be found on our Friends Group website, which is horconmarsh.org. So be sure to check that out. There's a lot going on coming up. So, and if you have questions afterwards, just let me know. Happy to answer them.
Just a little bit on that February 1st bus trip, which is our winter birds. That will run from 3 to 5:30, 3:30 to 5:30, I believe. So, yes. So after that, which is going to be a separate event, we're going to have an owl prowl, and that is open up to anybody. There's no charge for that. We're going to have a small little talk on owls. Liz or myself will be doing that. And then afterwards, we're going to go walk out to the islands and play some calls to see if we get some response for any live owls that we've been calling. So that will be after the bus tour. Two separate events, but they're both going to be kind of back to back. So you don't need to go on the bus trip to go to the second or the owl prowl. And if you're had enough with after the bus trip, you're certainly you're free to go. So you don't have to hang around anymore for that. So with that, there are been some winter birds that kind of moved into the area the last week or so. I was able the other night to locate a couple of snowy owls west of Waupun. They've been kind of elusive this year, and we had to search quite a bit to find them. And sometimes they just like to roost out in the middle of a very undulating cornfield where they're hidden, and then you have to kind of drive around at dark or dusk, and hopefully they'll sit on a power pole. But we were able to find two separate birds. One is a very white bird, and the other one is much more mottled. So cross your fingers, hope they'll hang around.
Start right there.
Okay. Any other pressing business that anybody wants to bring up? Any sightings? Anything that we should need to know or discuss before next month's meeting? And next month's meeting is going to be Barb and Angie, club members. And last summer, they went to the Galapagos Islands. And so it's always kind of cool to have people that you know. Barb and Angie, they're a couple of super volunteers that we have here at the center. And it's been kind of one of those things that on their bucket list, always wanted to go to Galapagos, and they did it last summer. So they will be filling us in on what they saw and did. Looking forward to having them. So with that, we're going to break into our regularly scheduled program. So tonight we're going to have Dan Erickson, and he will be speaking on the 70 plus years of raptor research at Cedar Grove. I do believe it's one of the oldest, if not the oldest, continuing research raptor projects in the United States. It's right on the Lake Michigan coast. And has anybody ever been there? Okay. All right. We got two or three folks that have been there. So Dan is going to talk to us about Cedar Grove. So Danny's been is a birder from Wauwatosa. He's been a lifelong interest in nature and biology. Led him to study wildlife ecology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And since then, he's been fortunate enough to learn from many skilled raptor researchers at HawkWatch International, Peregrine Fund, Ridge Bird Observatory, the Mackinac Straits Raptor Watch, honing his raptor banding skills. And since 2021, Danny oversees the raptor count and banding operation each fall at Cedar Grove Ornithological Research Station, continuing its mission monitoring long-term aviation migration trends in the Western Great Lakes. And he's currently a first-year graduate student at UW Green Bay studying disease and migrating hawks. So with that, let's welcome Danny. Are you there, Dan?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
So
thanks for the
take it
introduction.
away.
Yeah, I'm Danny Erickson.
So just quickly, is everybody in Zoom, can you hear Dan?
Didn't hear. I'm loud and clear.
Okay. All right.
Check.
Okay. And we'll take care of the volume on our end.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for the introduction. That was awesome. Yeah. So I'm Danny Erickson. I help manage Cedar Grove Ornithological Research Station. And tonight, it's all eyes on the sky, our unofficial motto. Always watching the sky in case a bird comes in. But today, happy to talk to you guys about the work that goes on at Cedar Grove. So just a little introduction. We'll talk about Cedar Grove history, the background of the station, the work that we do there, a lot of the banding research, and then we'll talk a little bit about the raptors in Wisconsin, just a brief survey of the birds that we work with. And lastly, I'll end with a lot of our cool partnerships and research that we're doing. But I think I was just going to go a little bit about myself, but it sounds like we talked about that a little bit. But yeah, I graduated from Madison a few years ago, did a lot of seasonal field work, and really gravitated towards birds and birds of prey. Like Jeff said, I've been fortunate enough to work with HawkWatch International, the Peregrine Fund, Hawk Ridge, and Mackinac Straits, really getting a breadth of raptor research. And through these programs, these projects, I was able to get more bird-related experience, and eventually got my own banding permit. And since fall of 2021, I helped take over the operation at Cedar Grove. So Cedar Grove has its roots way back in 1930s. It was started by the Milwaukee Pelican Museum, and it was a station to document raptor migration. They probably also got some study skins, some samples for the collection as well. But as it turns out, Cedar Grove is a well suited to observe raptor migration. So probably as long as people have lived in the area, they've noticed that in the fall, it's a natural concentration point. If there's a nice west wind or northwest wind, it blows raptors along the western lakeshore of Lake Michigan. A lot of raptors don't like flying over open bodies of water, especially on migration. It's actually quite dangerous for them. There's not places for them to stop and rest and refuel. So they stick to land as close as possible. So that's why Cedar Grove is a really good spot. It's a natural funnel birds in fall migration. And so operations at Cedar Grove were going on through the 1930s. World War II halted operations. We fast forward to 1950. Two local birders from Milwaukee, Dan Berger and Helmut Mueller. You can see here in this upper picture here, back in the 1950s. There's Dan here, and a taller gentleman and helmet, and the flannel over here. But yeah, they heard about the station, and one day they decided to hike up to Cedar Grove and try to see the station. Um, the story goes is that they found it just fine, and then they tried to break in, but apparently Owen Grommy, who was the curator at the museum, encountered them, and instead of reprimanding them, he gave them the keys, and those two have been there ever since. So in 1952, it was designated a state natural area in Wisconsin, one of the first. And in their first year, they only caught 5 raptors. Apparently, they like Owen or any other museum workers didn't walk them through how to trap raptors. And so at the time, catching raptors wasn't as widespread of a technique as it is today. You know, we look around to North America alone, there's probably hundreds of raptor count and banding stations, but not a lot was known. How do you catch these birds of prey? And so these two kind of did their homework. They looked back in the literature and brought back a lot of techniques, like looking at old falconry techniques. And so they revitalized the field of raptor research, and really through their 70 years of coming back to Cedar Grove, documenting not only raptor migration, but what birds are doing in the Great Lakes region. Through their continual coming back and forth, establishing that long-term data set, they really made important contributions to raptor research. And that mission continues to today. So last fall actually was our 75th anniversary, our 75th year in operation. And so we're the longest continuous operation raptor banding station in North America. We're continuing that long-term trend that Dan and Helmet set to today. We're a all-volunteer run nonprofit organization made up a small staff with a board of directors. Typically, people they're local in the area. They're able to devote their time to help run the station throughout the season. We have myself, the banding director, kind of coordinate the banding and permitting and things like that. We have a great system of volunteers, friends, and neighbors that help us in the day-to-day operation, help us do wonderful things for the station. For example, we're there every day from mid-August to mid-November, and so especially for our banding trainees, we've got some wonderful neighbors who open up their home and let us do laundry there, for example, take a nice warm shower, or just a nice home-cooked meal that really mean a lot to us. And so each year we also hire on 2 early career professionals, so typically college age students who recently graduated who are looking to get experience in raptor banding. And so we bring them on, and they stay at the station. They have their own separate little trailer, but they really help in all aspects of operation. They learn raptor ID, safe banding, and trapping as well, that they themselves will use in research of their own. And so this is the upper right here is actually, the station as it stands today. And this little front room with this little slit, this is the inside of it, and this is our observation blind, essentially. All the trapping goes on in here as well, but we're sitting in there from mid-August to mid-November every day. Unless it's raining, we're out there to document raptor migration. So it's a real commitment. So there are a few things that influence migration, especially in the fall. So I mentioned earlier, Cedar Grove is in a great spot to monitor raptor migration due to wind patterns. And so raptors in migration will use thermals. And so these are warm air currents. They'll ride these warm pockets of air and rising up and up and up, and then they'll catch the next one as they migrate south. This is a really great energy saving technique. They'll ride those warm air pockets. So in addition to weather factors, certain landscapes and topography also shape migration. And so I mentioned Cedar Grove on this map. We're about right here, right on Lake Michigan, about 40 miles north of Milwaukee. Um, Again, we on a west wind day, raptors get blown along the lakeshore and they're funneled. They won't cross Lake Michigan, so they follow the land. So it's much like you think of Cape May of New Jersey, they're right on the Atlantic Ocean. Raptors aren't going to fly over that body of water. They're hugging the land. And so when you look at a lot of uh, sites out west, a lot of them are like raptor count and banding stations are situated right on mountaintops. And that's because the, uh, the landscape, the geography will push warm air up, and raptors are following these leading lines south as well. And so this is what a raptor will see. Bird's eye view. This is Lake Michigan right up here. You got the shoreline right here. And if you zoom in, we've got our rustic little cabin in the woods here, our manicure trapping area, and then if you zoom into that, we've got our traps. So at Cedar Grove, we use four trap types. The main one is the mist net, and this is widely used technique in all of avian research. And all it is like a thin mesh net, much like a volleyball net, strung up between two poles with trammels in it, so that when a bird strikes it, it falls down in these pockets. We go out and extract it. Another type trap that we use is the Dogaza. It's a lot like the mist net, except instead of multiple panels, it's just one square mesh panel that is releasable, so that when a raptor strikes the net, it releases and then collapses around the bird and secures it that way. And so this is like a ring of mist nets or Dogaza nets at one of our lures. It's very very hard to see, but I guess that's the point of the nets. And then we also use bow nets. These are typically for our larger raptor, like red tails, peregrines, or eagles. These are a ring of metal that are anchored to the ground, and they've got it's spring action. There's got a spring here and a spring here, and we would open the net and secure it to a release, and so it forms much like a bow. And so we're luring for a raptor. We bring it in using non-invasive, non-protected lures. The raptor comes in. It's not flapping or anything. It's on the lure. We know it's safe to trigger from our blind. We just press a button and that flips the bow net over, and we have a caught raptor. Another trap type we use occasionally at the station is the balsa tree, and this is more of a portable trap. And all it is just a cage that's got a weight on it, and it also has fishing line nooses. So when you stick like a house sparrow or a mouse in this cage, a raptor sees it, comes in, and it gets its talon. It does some dancing, gets its talons caught on the fishing line. Again, it's more of a portable trapping technique, but we do employ it occasionally at the station. So we safely caught a raptor. We go out and safely handle it, grab it by the legs, and then we bring it into the station. There we take several measurements. So we'll measure wing chord, tail length, and mass as well. We're also able to age each individual by their molt. Raptors are able to, they have a predictable molt pattern, and so are able to age them that way. So this Merlin, for example, right here, we can see that it's got two different colored flight feathers. These newer feathers are kind of darker, almost bluish, but the retained feathers are going to be these brown feathers. And so we can know with great confidence that this bird is not a juvenile bird. We can also assess body condition, so we could measure the amount of fat or muscle on the bird to see how well they are preparing for migration. And we're also able to sex each individual, and this is done with a combination of measurements. So in raptors, the female is typically larger in size and weight, and we use those measurements to sex these raptors. But before we do any of that, probably the most important thing that we do is we brand the bird. So we'll use a leg gauge, just like this. It's got a little piece of metal with different numbered gauges on it. Our smallest one that we use at the station is a number 2, all the way up to an 8 or a 9. An 8 or 9 would be for like a great horn or an eagle. And so we run that the the space along up and down the leg. We give it some spin. We want to make sure that the band is properly fit on the leg and it's not going to cause any injury or abrasion. And then we'll use once we have the size picked out, we'll affix a lightweight aluminum metal band that has a individualized number that's going to stick with the bird for the rest of its life, much like, your or my social security number. And then we have 3 different types of bands. We have the smallest are these butt ends here, where the butt ends just butt ends and they close that way. And then we have a lock-on band right here. It's got a little whip of metal that we fold over that helps prevent larger birds from taking off the band. And our largest band right here on the left is a rivet band. It's closed with a rivet that we see right here. And those are going to be for our biggest birds at the station, so great horns and eagles. And so, yeah, we measure each bird. We want to make sure that it's a proper fit. It's not going to cause any injury or abrasion, because the bird is going to wear that band for the rest of its life. And the whole idea is that we will that bird will be retrapped, right, and then whoever extracts it can write down that band number and report it to the bird banding lab, and then I get that data back about, hey, this bird was caught at this spot this X many years later, and that gives us really, really important information. That's the whole basis behind this work. And so, yeah, I'll just say that, if you ever do find a band, either you snap a picture of a bird with a band on it and you're able to read it, or more likely you'll see a roadkill bird that has a band on it. It's really important to just report that at this reportbands.gov. And that gives a lot of information about that bird and this research. And so we're really banding with a purpose. And so over 6 million birds have been banded since 1904. So it's an active technique in over 100 years. It's really been important for studying a lot of things, but with birds, especially at Cedar Grove, it's really important to study migration routes. We're able to look at survival rates and longevity records. How long are birds? How long are they living? We're also able to learn things about their behavior. Are they utilizing certain habitats at different times of the year? Are they going back to the same site year after year, or are they going to different places? And yeah, so data from bird banding is used in a lot of things. We can monitor population trends. We can estimate production rates. It's also important in waterfowl hunting or game birds to know harvest rates. We're also able to study how well restoration of endangered species are going. We can also study things like pollution or environmental contaminants, or look at highly pathogenic avian influenza. That's a really important ongoing concern in the area. Look at hazards at airports, things like that. So that was a little bit about the work that goes on in the station, why banding is important, and why we're out there every day from August to November. So now we'll go a little bit about just a little brief survey of birds of Wisconsin. I know you're all expert birders, but we'll just go over them quickly anyways. And so we'll start off with the vultures. In Wisconsin, we have 2 reported. So we have the ubiquitous turkey vulture here with its bright red head. But 2 years ago, we did count a black vulture, and there are reports in Wisconsin. And I would think that with warming temperatures, it's only a matter of time before we see more of these guys. And luckily, they're fairly easy to tell apart. So as adults, turkey vultures have that bright red head. They also have much more white in their underwings and a longer tail. Whereas black vultures, they have the black head. Even though turkey vultures, as juveniles, have the black head as well. but really it's the amount of white. We can see here that black vultures, the white is restricted to the outer primaries, so like these little fingertips. They also tend to have a shorter tail than the turkey vulture. We've never caught a vulture at Cedar Grove, and even if we did, we wouldn't put a band on it. Um, they would get these patagial markers here. So in this image in the upper right, there's a little numbered band on the arm. You might have seen these on like California condors. And this is because as a cooling mechanism, vultures will poop and pee on their legs. And so you can imagine that having a metal band on there would kind of cause all that gunk to accumulate and could lead to infection and death of the bird. So vultures don't get any leg bands. And unfortunately, vultures are persecuted, especially around the world. Um, and I think they're among the most beautiful birds. They serve this really important ecological importance, keeping the landscape clean and getting rid of all these dead carcasses that not many other things could eat. So, yeah, vultures are great, and I love seeing them. Next, we move to the accipiter, which recently some of you may know the whole genus of accipiter was split up. So now there's only one accipiter in North America, and that is the sharp-shinned hawk, which happens to be our smallest diurnal North American raptor. These guys, are accipiter, kind of another name are forest hawks. They have these short, broad wings and long rudder-like tail that they use to navigate dense canopy. They typically are forest nesters, so the name fits. Um, Hawks, they typically have different plumages as juveniles and adults. And so it's pretty easy to age them in hand or in flight as well. So we can look at this example here. Sharp-shinned hawk in juvenile plumage. It's got brown vertical streaking on the breast. It also has a brown back and a yellow eye. Um, After its second year, or in its adult plumage, it gets orange vertical barring, and then the back changes to this beautiful slatey blue color. And their yellow eye also darkens from to orange to even darker red as they age. And so I mentioned the accipiter genus was split up, and that left the Cooper's hawk into a new genus, the Aster genus. And it's essentially just a larger sharp-shinned hawk. As juveniles, it's got that same brown plumage and yellow eye that darkens to orange and blue as they age. And even, I've been a bird watcher for years and raptor researcher for years, but telling these two apart in flight is still tricky for me. Some helpful tips that I use, Cooper's hawks typically are larger headed, and from a distance, they look much like a lowercase t, and they have a more curved tail as well. Also, flight behavior. Cooper's hawks are much more stronger direct flyers. They use more of their wing, a more powerful flight. Whereas Sharpies tend to be more flappy, and their power comes from the wrist. And these guys tend to be on a windy day. They tend to be blown out or blown around more easily. They typically have a shorter head projection from a distance, and so whereas the Cooper's hawk is like a lowercase t, the Sharpie is like a capital T, and they also have that straight tail edge as well. And then we have of course, the American goshawk. Its name has changed multiple times, but it also has that streaking plumage as a juvenile, and that brown back. One key feature that tells them apart from any other raptor is this white eyebrow that they have in all age classes. And in their adult plumage, they have this unmistakable, bold black and white patterning and this dark red eye. Just a really beautiful bird overall. And they're quite large. They're essentially red-tailed size with, broad wings and a long tail. And combined with that white eyebrow and that black and white patterning, they're pretty unmistakable. So at Cedar Grove, we haven't been seeing many of these guys recently. There used to be big cycles of them back in the 70s or 80s, but that has seemed to disappeared. In the last 2 years, we haven't even seen one goshawk at Cedar Grove. Um, and so in Wisconsin, they seem to be having a tough time. And this is likely due to a combination of factors. One being habitat loss, of course. So goshawks are old growth specialists. They need old, well-developed forests for nesting. And so with certain timber production practices, they're running out of places to nest, which may also be impacting their prey base as well. Also, different management practices related to bringing back certain carnivores, for example, like fishers. Um, those were in low numbers at one point in Wisconsin, and they were brought back and probably having a negative impact on their nests. So there's fewer goshawks, more fishers predating on their nests, as well as avian West Nile virus. So these guys are really having a tough time of it in Wisconsin. Next, move on to the bootios, and these are larger raptors, typically broad-tailed, and we usually see them soaring. We'll start off with the broad-winged hawk. It's got that bold black and white broad tail pattern, that black trailing edge to the wing as adults, and they kind of have broader, you know, bigger bodies, which gives them more of a broad-winged shape, hence the name. And these guys are famous for their big flights in the fall. That these big kettles of them just following those warm air currents as they fly south. So large group of all raptors or hawks are called kettle in migration, and they get this name from much like the water boils in a kettle, pretty aptly named. And then we also see red-shouldered hawks, which in their adult plumage have those red shoulders. They have this bold black and white checkered pattern under the wings. In flight, they also have a translucent little comma that's visible from underneath. These guys also have a banded tail, but it's much thinner bands than like a broadwing, for example. And then we also have the rough-legged hawk. These guys are more of a cold adapted species, so we'll see them towards the end of in November. These guys are one of two North American raptors or hawks, excuse me, that have feathered legs, and so it's a pretty key identifier. In flight, they have this dark mark on the breast as well as these dark wrist patches as well that really identify separate rough-legged hawks. And then we have the ever common ubiquitous red-tailed hawk, also known as roadside hawk. If you ever driving down the highway, you see a brown perched raptor, it's more than likely these guys. But in flight, there are a few key field marks to tell them apart. And so the thing that I use the most is this presence of a petagio mark. So it's just a little brown arm or marker right on the upper arm. If you see that on a raptor, you know you're looking at a red-tailed hawk. No other buteo in North America has that. And while, of course, adults have these red tails, in juvenile plumage, they have kind of this brownish gray barring, which can make for tricky identification. And it's not until usually after their second year or third year, they start to get that reddish tail. And red tails are famous for their many different morphs across North America. There's huge phenotypic variation, which has led to some exciting research. There's light morphs, dark morphs, intermediate morphs. There's a whole bunch of red tails. We have this northern harrier, it's on its own, also known as a marsh hawk, for it's commonly seen hovering over marshes, flying low over open habitat. One thing that's unique about harriers is they have a facial disc, much like owls, and they'll use that in combination with their low flying habits as to kind of like scan over marshes as they look for like voles and other prey in the winter. Harriers also have this white rump in all ages and all sexes. That also is a key field mark. Females are usually brown back, and they also have brown streaking on the breast, whereas these males have this unmistakable kind of silvery gray back, black wingtips, and then their white underside. Really, it gives them the name of gray ghosts as they haunt over marshlands in the winter. And next we have the osprey, also called the fish eagle. Again, that bold black and white patterning, that um, brownish black eye stripe. Um, we've never caught these guys at Cedar Grove. We usually just see them in migration. They have these lanky, long M-shaped wings, um, commonly found near water where they readily adapt to a lot of nest platforms. So it's always great to drive around in the summer and see a platform occupied by these guys. And yeah, typically we don't um, catch them. They're just not interested in our lures. They just seem to have other things in mind and head south. And next we'll move on to the falcons. And we'll start with the American kestrel is our smallest and most colorful falcon in North America. The males are blue winged and they typically have a bluer cap, whereas the females have this black and rufusy striped pattern on her wings and back all the way down to the tail. And she also has kind of a um, rufusy streaking on the breast, whereas the male tends to have these spots as well. So kestrels, thankfully, are fairly easy to sex just by plumage. Another key feature that tells you you're looking at a kestrel is they have a double facial stripe. They're the only North American raptor that has that. So they have a mustache with sideburns, kind of like these two marks. And so that separates them from other similar sized raptors. These guys are pretty common or commonly a common sight seen perched on power lines in grassland areas or ag areas, looking for anything from insects to reptiles, amphibians to small birds and mammals. A little bit bigger than in the falcon is the merlin. Again, it's got the male has this kind of slaty blue back, whereas the female tends to be, while she is larger in size, she tends to be brown overall. These guys are really direct flyers, so that their scientific name actually comes from a reference to how they fly a lot like a pigeon. They're really just strong, quick flappers, and have those pointed wings as well. And of course, we have the peregrine falcon, this icon of conservation in North America and endangered species. We typically catch, 15 to 20 of these a season. They have that dark helmet and that kind of dark mustache as well, long pointed wings, just a large raptor. That were luckily has made a comeback in the U.S. and we're lucky to see him still. And then we'll move to the largest birds, the eagles, essentially just big dark birds that we see in the sky. We commonly count bald eagles throughout the fall, but we also see a handful of golden eagles, maybe three a season or 1 to 3 a season. And there are a few key traits to tell them apart. Bald eagles tend to have a larger head projection. They have more variable white in the body, and they fly on more straight, broad, plank-like wings. Whereas golden eagles, the white is more discrete in their plumage. So we can see bald eagles, for example, this guy is looking pretty ragged. There's white all over until we have that after 4 to 5 years. It has that unmistakable white head and white tail. Golden eagles, on the other hand, the white is more limited to certain spots on the body. So juveniles, there will be white like right on the wrist patch or at the base of the tail. When it's in adult plumage, it's just dark overall with that kind of that gold nape. So in addition to the amount of white in the body, there's flight style and behavior. Balds are kind of that, again, like that broad plank-like wings. Goldens, they tend to have a slight dihedral, so they hold their wings at a little bit of an angle, kind of like a turkey vulture. And then the wings, if you look closely, they pinch at the body. So where the secondaries meet, there's a slight pinch. And then I've also observed golden eagles, they end their flaps on the upstroke. So a combination of plumage and flight style and behavior really you can tell these magnificent birds apart. And we also, in addition to the diurnal raptors, the hawks and eagles, we also study owls. So starting October 1st, we will reopen the mist nets after dusk and run them to dawn. We will make we'll check each net at 30-minute intervals and then bring back any owls and then ban them and they'll be on their way. So once October rolls around, it's pretty nonstop. Keeps pretty nonstop activity. So owls are really neat in that they have several adaptations to nocturnal hunting. So we see here in this image on the left, the owls have on their leading edge and trailing edge, they have these little feather projections that act like silencers, so it helps keep their wing flaps silent. Their skulls also have these cool adaptations. They have asymmetrical ear hole openings that help them to pinpoint even the smallest, like mouse ruffling in the leaf litter. And of course, they have these large, forward-facing, almost human-like eyes that help them to detect every photon in the night. Unlike the hawks and the eagles, the diurnal raptors, owls we use a speaker to bring them in. And we have, at Cedar Grove, we only have one speaker going, but that speaker is going all night. And it's playing the call of this guy, the northern saw-whet owl. We catch typically about 100 to 300 of these birds on average, so it's our most caught owl at the station. And they're pretty dang adorable, pretty cute. And it gets its name from kind of old times. You're sharpening like a metal blade on a wedding stone. So that's what its call refers to. Any other owl, so like eastern screech owl, for example, are only going to be incidentally caught. At Cedar Grove, we have one speaker going that's playing the saw-whet owl caller. And so any other owl that we get is just incidentally caught. For screech owls, we get 4 to 5 a season, and we get both morphs, the gray here and the red. And recently, I found out that these guys actually hybridize to produce a brown morph, which is, pretty self-explanatory, but it's like you have a bird in the hand that's not quite gray, but not quite red. So it makes sense that even these guys, their plumages intermingle occasionally. A little bit larger than that, we have the long-eared owl with its long ears or long tufts of feathers, of course, that make it look like it have long ears. And then that in combination with its wonderful vermiculated plumage patterns make it look like a broken branch as it's roosting. So this image here is just to show you, occasionally we use a ultraviolet light to age owls. For whatever reason, their feathers glow hot pink under UV light. I don't know who found that out years ago. We're able to age owls this way. Or it's one method to age owls. The bright pink is caused by a protein called porphyrin. And so the brighter the feather is, the more porphyrin is in that feather. So that means it's a newly formed feather, a younger feather. If it's white, it lacks porphyrin, so that means it's an older feather. And so for this long-eared owl, for example, we know it's not a juvenile owl. These guys are pretty variable. We maybe get 3 or 5 of these a season. Some years we haven't caught any. They're pretty variable. And again, they're just incidentally caught going through our trapping area. And we have the big owls, of course, the barred owl with its "who cooks for you" all call, and then the great horned owl. We've had the past few years, we've had a great horned owl nest nearby, and so we hear them hooting throughout the season pretty regularly. And so those were a lot of the birds that we'll tend to encounter at the station. And so this is just a slide to show you the phenotypic variation in all the morphs of red-tails. These weren't birds caught at Cedar Grove. This was actually part of the Red-tailed Hawk Project, Well, we can see, just showing you the amount of variation in the morphs all across North America, and it's really caused some confusion, but as to where their ranges overlap, are these like hybridizing with each other? What really is the difference between a dark and light morph? But luckily, somebody is working on that, and so this is research done by Bryce Robinson, who was out at Cornell in New York. He came to Cedar Grove a few years ago, and we're helping him with his research. We're deploying some transmitters. So we can see here in this image, we have a hooded red tail with one of our transmitters on it. And so again, he's trying to uncover kind of connect the genetics and plumage to breeding sites. We want to deploy transmitters to not only learn about raptor or red tail movement and migration, but also hopefully tie the individual back to a breeding site. And so this is a map that Bryce made, kind of outlining some of the different subspecies in North America. But again, there's just questions as to where they overlap and where different morphs migrate and things like that. So this is an example of some of the birds that we tagged at Cedar Grove. Again, there's some variation just at the individual level. And when we had one of our birds go down to Kentucky to winter, and this is just an example showing of what that data looks like in a computer, what those little points tell us. So again, banding is really important technique, but it's only with recent technological advances like transmitters, we're able to tell a lot more information about raptor ecology than ever before. So it's really a golden age of raptor research. In addition to that, to our fall work, we also wanted to expand because raptors aren't only in Wisconsin in the fall. We looked into kestrel research in the spring, and as many of you know, kestrels are declining in North America. And this is backed by data from multiple different sources, so like Christmas bird counts, breeding bird survey, the raptor population index, as well as local nest box monitoring programs. They all show the same thing, that starting in the late 90s, there seems to be a decline of kestrels. And looking at our data at Cedar Grove, our data perfectly matches that. Again, starting in the late 90s, we just see this decline in kestrels seen and caught at the station. And so we wanted to contribute data as to why kestrels are declining. And so we started with, thanks to help by local birders, Paul and Annie Mueller, we just wanted to generate more kestrel data in Wisconsin, connect that local data to the broader networking program, and working with a lot of different organizations, so like Cornell Nest Watch, Hawk Ridge, as well as Central Wisconsin Kestrel Research out in Buena Vista. Janet and Amber have been really important to getting this project off the ground, and it's through a lot of different volunteers, nonprofit organizations, and a lot of nature centers working together to put up these boxes and monitor them to help learn about why kestrels are declining in North America. So our project, we have about 70 boxes up so far, all the way from Milwaukee to Manitowoc County. And this is, a combination of private landowners, a lot of conservation organizations like Glacial Lakes Conservancy, Havenwood State Forest. So I've got really great partners helping me with this project, both to put up kestrel boxes and help monitor them. In addition to that, we're also color marking adults or color marking birds as well. Some research called for, studies outside of the breeding season. So there's a lot of work done with boxes and kestrel nestling banding, but not a lot of work done in the non-breeding season. And so color marking is part of work to better understand what kestrels are doing outside of the breeding season. And the whole point of color marking them is to allow them to be tracked later on in life without having to recapture these birds. So thankfully, kestrels are great study species, and they have a typically perch in high visual areas, so like power lines. And this is another example that Annie caught one of our color marked birds. We can see that this bird is color marked, and we know who that is, and he's got a nice, tasty snake stack. Um, so yeah, this is research into like, we see kestrels year round. Are these a mix of residents, migrants, or a combination of both? Or are these birds coming from, Alaska or northern Canada? Um, so yeah, that's some exciting research. We're also looking into parasitic disease in sharp-shinned hawks. And so in 2018, banders in Braddock Bay Raptor Research out in northern New York, right on Lake Erie there, I believe, they found some in their normal banding, migration banding, they found some sharp-shinned hawks with abnormal lesions in their mouths. They took some sampling and they had it tested at Cornell by a wildlife vet there who determined that these oral lesions, you can see some examples here, it kind of looks like some cottage cheese in the mouth almost, are caused by a nematode. And this is normally found in the gastrointestinal tract of raptors, but this is the first time that it's found in the mouth. So this has led to a lot of open-ended questions like, where did this come from? Of course, does it impact the bird in terms of their health or migration ability? Can they spread to other raptors or even people for that matter? And so um, there's a Sharp-Shinned Hawk project started by Braddock Bay. If anybody's interested, they've got a website and a protocol monitoring, bunch of paperwork available. We reached out to other banding stations in North America, especially near the Great Lakes area, but we had one here in Idaho to check for migrating sharpshins to see if they had the lesions, to kind of learn more about it as well. And this is part of my graduate research. So I am deploying transmitters on sharp-shinned hawks to not only learn about their migration pathways, what are they doing on their non-breeding habitats, and hopefully get some breeding data as well. Not a lot is known about sharp-shinned breeding behavior. And so I'm using satellite transmitters, and this is the first time that this technology has been made available for smaller raptors. It's usually this technology has been limited by the size of the bird, and so this is the first time this has been studied for sharpshins. There have been other studies about radio, like telemetry, but this is the first highly detailed study on them. And so again, study their movement, habitat use, but also see if this disease impacts the Sharpies. And this is one of my transmitters here. It's a solar powered transmitter, and it weighs about 3 grams. We attached 6 of these last fall. This is banding trainee Bridget and we were deploying a transmitter on a sharp-shinned hawk. And we can see here that it fits right on the back, and it fits much like just like a backpack. There's straps that go around the neck, and then there's a leather breastplate that sits on the keel. And then it goes under the wing and behind, and it attaches to there's little loops on the transmitter. So it's secure to the bird. It's not too loose or too tight. It's nice and snug. And I'm getting some really amazing data back on my birds. And my very first one actually went down all the way to Veracruz, Mexico, where she's hanging out. And this wasn't all in. This was a few weeks. And I had another bird here that made it down to past Chicago, but for whatever reason, instead of heading south, it went northeast, and right now is hanging out in central Michigan. More of my typical sharpies, I guess, like are in southern Illinois, Kentucky, more of the typically expected wintering areas for these birds. And this is kind of a big mess of spaghetti about what this data looks like at the fine scale. But the whole point of this is to show you that I'm able to essentially get a daily diary for these birds. I haven't yet analyzed this data yet, but it's just a lot more information that banding can tell us alone, much more data than perhaps radio telemetry can give us. So stay tuned for more exciting work on that. And there's also ways that people can get involved and even visit the station. And so we partner with the Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin. We have field trips that help raise funds to help support our work continue and help us to continue going. We offer 3 field trips for people to come and visit the station and experience bird banding up close and see the history of the station. The longest continuous raptor banding station in North America. And we also have in the spring we have kestrel nestling banding available as well, typically mid-June as well. And I'll say that if you haven't been on any of these field trips before, to definitely take a look at their website. Their booklet opens up pretty soon, and there's a lot of natural field trips throughout Wisconsin. Anything from bird watching, bird banding to hiking, canoeing, looking for frogs and amphibians. You name it, it's on there, and goes to supporting good local causes. And so with that, I really want to thank you guys for having me tonight. I hope you learned something new, enjoyed the talk. I want to thank to all the Cedar Grove board members who have helped, really make this work possible, as well as our station friends and volunteers, all the previous trainees, as well as donors and contributors that help keep this work going and help keep us in operation. So thank you all. Thank you for listening. Oh, and you can follow along with us as well. We got some social media links.
Well, thanks, Dan. Good presentation. If you have any questions that are on Zoom, please put them in the chat. Do we have any questions from the live audience here? Okay. So Amy asked if you had any vagrants such as a caracara or others at your station.
We've seen swallowtail kites, a couple of the kites, not caracaras. So I think, Mississippi kite, Peruginous hawks. I've been seeing Swainson's. We see it. We have seen a few of those occasionally, Swainson hawk, but nothing too extreme. Nothing like too tropical. But yeah, so kind of your typical. We're not as high volume of a site, say like Hawk Ridge. They get a lot, thousands of raptors seen and banded each year, but we do pretty all right for a small Wisconsin organization.
So Jane asked, what about Harris's hawks?
We have seen one. We have got pictures of one and banded one, but I think there's a story behind it that it was actually like a falconry bird that got loose. So that's our only record of Harris hawks at Cedar Grove. There was a snowy that was caught nearby and then brought back to the station for banding. Sorry, go ahead.
Mark has asked, since they started 75 years ago,
Yes.
Caught 5 the first year, how many raptors have been caught in the 75?
That's a great question. Idea? I know it's more than 45,000, but I think we haven't reached 50,000 yet, but we're getting there. One of these years.
Awesome. And he says, you record sightings of other birds, such as migrating birds like blue jays?
Yeah, we also record non-raptors as well. So we keep daily counts of like blue jays or songbirds, cranes, for example. So like any um, large flocks, we'll count and have a separate, almost like a separate eBird list. And so yeah, it's not only the raptors, but we're looking at um, um, all bird migration in the area as well. We observe that daily as well too. So thank you.
So you are separate from the water bird count, correct? That takes place at, is that at the Western Great Lakes Bird Observatory?
Yeah, we're separate. I mean, we email every now and then, but yeah, we're separate. We probably count similar, a lot of the same birds, but
But you are in
yeah,
close proximity, correct?
correct.
Okay, what's the furthest distance that a banded raptor has been found from Cedar Grove?
We have one story of a peregrine that was recovered in Europe, and it wasn't
God.
clear if it was either the band, the bird itself, or like part of the lake. So that was one of them. Typically, so it's going to vary by species. Um, a lot of our like red tails and sharpies and saw-whets are going to go to typically recoveries in like southern U.S., kind of by the Gulf. It's not too far south, but we do have a lot of peregrines get recovered. They get like trapped, and then the band gets reported at in like South America, which is understandable. Um, they're long distance migrants, so typically it's not lower um, continental U.S., but the peregrines go pretty far.
Okay. Since you have incidentally captured over 150 species at the station, is that correct?
Yes, if we go back to um, the 75 years, a lot of weird stuff has been caught. We actually had a lot of records this year. So we caught a pheasant. That was pretty neat. And one of the sage thrashers, or there was a thrasher in the fall in the area. I forget the name of it. Um, and then a Harris sparrow too. We caught one of those, which are all station records. That was really neat to see those.
Yeah, it was a good year for Harris's sparrow this year.
Yeah.
He had one here at the center, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool. And then next thing you know, there's like been a dozen of them and reported like 30 some counties. Like, okay, well,
Crazy. Yeah, very cool.
yeah, it's just to me it's mind blowing how far birds travel and where they travel and how quickly and where they go and why do they go there, and all of a sudden they're
Absolutely.
they're at your feeder and in your backyard, and 3 weeks ago they were in South America, and that's, to me, that's part of the mystique of birding.
Yes,
What gets
absolutely.
you. So what was your spark, Daniel, to get you into birds and birding? Was there anything particular incident or a particular bird that piqued your interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. No, I mean, I've always noticed birds as a younger person. Um, I didn't think I would study them, for a while, growing up, but it wasn't until I went on my birding trip, first birding trip. This was the summer, um, right before the end of freshman year. Went on a birding trip, and loved it, and that really got me hooked on birds. I got my first field guide right when I got home. And so I've always slowly became a birder. And then when it came time to graduate, um, my advisor worked with spotted owls out in California. And so he offered me um, a really cool job to work there. So my first job from graduation, I got that bird experience, and then I was looking for the next job. I was like, hey, I've got this experience. And so it kind of snowballed from there to work in the bird world. And I'm really glad I did. Like, birds are truly great to study and to see and watch. And so I'm really privileged to be able to work with them and band with them. But yeah, that bird watching back in college really got me hooked.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, and that's what is great about birding as well. You can take it everywhere.
Yeah,
You don't need a bunch of people to go. It's great if you want to go together, but you can just you know wherever you
absolutely.
are, you're birding. So
Yeah,
okay.
look out your window.
Got questions here for our comments from Amy. What's the best way to discourage roadside use in public? My neighbor who feeds and lovebirds has been using this, and now red-tailed hawks and great horned owls have disappeared. I need to explain this to her in a calm but convincing manner. Is there any supporting literature that you can um, share, or any argument that you could?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. Thank you. I know this is a heavily researched topic, and so there is a lot of research out there. And if you just did like a Google Scholar search of rodenticide and raptors, you'll come up with a lot of evidence as to why it's bad. Um, in terms of like, it's hard to change somebody's mind um, in this sort of atmosphere. So yeah, just like it's kind of like we talked about maybe with like with cats and keeping them indoors. You want to just be sensible and approach them well. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of research. I don't know a lot of the work off the top of my head, but I know it's um, some researchers that do a lot of that in relation to accumulation in raptors, and so there's a lot of information out there. It's just a problem of synthesizing it, and then yeah, how do you get that out to the public? But yeah, best of luck with that endeavor. That's really really important. So yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, and Steve had posted a link, and it's from All About Birds, about raptors and poisons and stuff like that.
Okay,
So,
thank you,
um,
Steve.
yeah. Any questions from the audience here? We have some of your um, Eastern Wisconsin
Yeah,
Kestrel fans here that have hosted some folks, and we were just chatting prior to the meeting about banning kestrels, and I've had a couple kestrels at my farm years ago that we had a late raptor rehabilitator in our area, Barb Harvey, that used to ban every so often, and I had some kestrels there that she came out to ban, and of course, they're up in the nest, and Barb was getting along, in her years then already, and she said, I had the ladder there, and she hands me a paper bag, and she's okay, kiddo, go up and get them. And I was like, all right. So, I put a little leather glove on. I says, well, how do I grab them? She says, don't worry, they'll grab you. And stuck my hand in there, and she was right. Wow. And I get the first one, and I kind of shake it off, get it in the bag, and I do
yeah,
the next one, and next one latches onto the my glove, and you get that one down, and a racket. Oh my God, there's just that click 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 click, and then you got the
yeah.
adults, coming swooping down at your head. I
Oh
could
yeah,
literally feel the wind from from their wings when they would, dive bomb you. You couldn't dare
yeah.
look at them, otherwise you would fall off the ladder. But yeah, that was my little bit of experience.
Yeah, it's intense. Cool experience.
Yeah. So, uh, question. Annie has a question here. Ann says hi, Dan.
Hi.
So, so I would encourage anyone who wants to visit or learn more.
We have a
When
website.
that website, okay, website, cgors.org, and the GoFundMe is for the sharp-shinned hawk research. Um, and also, when you those that are members of the Natural Resources Foundation, and I would encourage everyone to join that wonderful organization. And then you can eligible to get on that the trips, and you can get on there and sign up for those trips. Uh, those things are amazing. You learn about the resource that you are curious about directly from the people that are working with it. They have the passion, the knowledge, and everything from it. So we got a comment from Leslie here in the audience. Yep. Comment from Leslie. Her and her husband had gone in early November and visited, and she was able to release a sharp-shinned hawk there that they had caught. How long is that? A couple hours or? Yeah, a couple hours. So typically that's what they are. Um, okay. They had a local falconer there with his red-tailed hawk too, so they got to see that up close as well.
Yeah.
So okay, Anne says her June 14th will be the day that you're doing kestrel banding in that
Yes.
eastern Wisconsin area. So
Hi,
if you're
Annie.
so if you're interested in that, and I've done that central Wisconsin area, and it's a
Yeah.
great one for if you have any kids, grandkids, younger ones. You know, bring the birds out of the box; they're right there. Um, you know, you know, right in hand, and you can watch them, and they're small and they're kind of noisy, and it's a great thing for anybody, but particularly kids to get them give them that little spark. You never know, what
Yes.
is the going to be the or who is going to be the next ornithologist that you're going to inspire just by being there. Mary asked, what areas in Wisconsin able to be part of? Oh, are there other areas in Wisconsin to be part of the kestrel nesting study? Um,
Um, for the moment, if it's like near Horicon or near Sheboygan, yes. If it's within this area, um, personally, I probably won't expand, unless or I'm always willing to if somebody wants to have a box in their yard or their grassland area. I'm more than happy to. I've got boxes to spare. Um, but outside of this, I know like Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance out in Madison, they've got hundreds of nest boxes kind of covering the central part of the state. Janet and Amber up in Stevens Point with the Central Kestrel Wisconsin project are also got a lot of boxes up in Buena Vista, Stevens Point area. Um, and yeah, this is also there are some boxes kind of near the Minnesota Wisconsin border as well through either Hawk Ridge or the University of Minnesota. So Wisconsin is a hotbed of kestrel research. For me, it's more of is it near these boxes and can I add it to my can I affordably drive to it? I guess really
Yeah,
is
it's kind of logistics thing. I
yes,
know the Eschenbachs do, and Brand Smith does the ones
yes,
in Dane County, and so I've had some boxes. I says, hey, yeah, well, I'm in Dodge County, so it's a little bit out of the way, and if they can get numbers and depends upon how long it takes to get there, to drive another hour out of the way to get one or two boxes. Well, maybe it's not quite, um, best use of their time, but hey,
I'm open to it. I won't discourage that. So if that's something that people would like, it's,
yeah,
the options out
we just
there.
need to get more Kestrel boxes here and make it
Yeah.
worth everybody's while. So, um,
All right. Well, thank you.
that last call for any questions or comments. Yes. On that map. Okay, so the question was on that map that you have there, Dan.
Yeah.
The what is the difference between the green dots and the red dots?
Good question. It is at the time when I took this screenshot, the green means that there was all the data for that box was like uploaded and it was up to date. The red means that you still need to upload the data. So that's the only difference. This is actually a kind of an outdated map that I made myself, but yeah, that's the only difference. These are just the general idea. Um, Green has data, red has no data at the time. So
Okay. They just haven't gotten around to checking them yet. So good question though. Good observation.
yeah, thank you. I'll update that.
So, with that, any other last questions from the audience here live? Um, any last chance to get into the chat? We want to thank you, Dan, so much for it's we get this national treasure we have in our own backyard here, and you always heard so much about it, and you heard about this, and it's like, gosh, why don't we investigate that more? And it's been kind of taken over by much younger audience, and which is great. That next generation of researchers and banders there. So,
They weren't always so welcoming to the visitors and guests and not so long ago. So
yeah.
things have
So
changed.
yeah. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, Dan, you go through the website, the Cedar Grove website.
That's probably the simplest, yeah. Yeah, my information's on there. All our board members are on there. So,
Okay.
well,
All right.
yeah,
Well, thank everybody. Thanks for coming out or virtual tonight. Great audience. And I said next month we're going to have a little more local presentation, or by local folks. It's going to be Barb and Angie, two members of our bird club, went to the Galapagos. Kind of
awesome.
uh, everybody's kind of on the bucket list. So, all
Well,
right.
thanks, Jeff, for having me. This was really fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We appreciate having you. So it's a great opportunity for everybody. All
All
right.
right.
With that, we're gonna sign off.
All right. Good night.
Bye bye.